It's a 2013 Dart with a 6-speed manual and a 1.4 liter turbocharged engine. I've had the car for, I think, about 4 weeks or so. I paid $6,000 on paying, because I'm still paying on it. But I am glad I got to make this later than what I wanted to. I made a post on my Instagram a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, you should definitely check it out. Really hope I wasn't too bright there. But I'm glad I waited, because it gave me time to fix a small issue that showed up and really get a feel for the car and be able to speak better about how I feel about it. So the small issue I had was under boost, I would have a misfire, and it just turned out to be a bad coil pack. But I replaced all 4. It was like $100, and all is well. So taking a seat, sorry, I'm setting down my tripod. Taking a seat in the car, it has more of a base model interior, I can tell. It has just gray plastic everywhere and a little bit of black. The non-touchscreen radio and the non-displayed gauge cluster. They have one of these with a, I believe, 7-inch display in it. It's called the TFT screen. I don't have one. The interior is not the cleanest right now. I need to vacuum it. I got a little bit of garbage in there. But overall, it is a very clean car with a very straight body. So moving on to things that I kind of greatly enjoy about the car is it's definitely the most powerful car I've owned, which is not powerful because the Mazda 6 has more horsepower, but it has a much more older, antiquated style transmission, which robs a lot more horsepower. So it's the fastest car I've owned, which is sad to say because it's not very fast. But it feels pretty peppy once you get into boost. Outside of boost, it's slow, but it is just a 1.4 liter. So I guess we will move to the back seats because there's not much to talk about up here. I will get to this later. So moving on to the back of the car, I purposely sat behind my seat. I stand at about 6'3", so my seat is moved pretty far back. And it's just to show that I still have room to sit. It's not the most comfortable, but you know, I fit. And I could go for a decently long drive sitting back here with no problems. The only problem I have is my head is very close to the roof. If I actually sit up all the way, I touch the roof. So this is a very small sedan, but it works. I've already had to drive with people in the back. I'm moving to a more comfortable position. I've already had to drive with people in the back, and me and my girlfriend both agree that these seats are very comfortable. I'm sitting back here. I've sat back here before. I still like the rears, but the fronts are very comfortable seats. They have a nice bit of side bolstering on them to hold you in place. So it feels comfortable. It feels like there was actual effort put into this interior. So moving on to some of the useless things back here. You have, well, not entirely useless. You have 2 cup holders back here, and then a joke in the Dart community called the dog bowl, because it's just a small, shallow bowl. I don't know what Dodge intended on you to put back here, but it's probably nothing useful. And then you go on into the trunk through here, which I have a bunch of crap in. Honestly, I got tools and stuff. And then stepping out, you have a small tab here. Pull it, and it gives you access to the trunk like that. I believe there's one on the other end too. So you can put both rear seats down if you like so. So you can have both rear seats down. It gives you a ton of room in case you need to put anything long back here. Can't currently think of what that would be, but you can in case you need to. So moving on to the rear of the car, that's where you get to the badges. Nothing important except for the fact that this is multi-air turbo. What that is a Fiat-based engine. It's not Fiat-based. It is a Fiat engine. It is a 1.4 liter turbocharged engine, and the multi-air stands for how its cam works. It's technically, if you want to get technical, it is a single overhead cam engine. but it has one cam on the exhaust side, and it has an extra lobe per cylinder that pressurizes oil, and then it uses that pressurized oil to open the intake valves, and that's all controlled by the computer. So it's technically dual overhead, but it's really a single overhead. It's kind of debatable based on how you think about it. So based on my trim level of Dart, my racetrack does not light up. This is just a big reflector, but my end lights do. I want to switch that to where it's all light up. And I do have the stock rear bumper cover that has the built-in tips, but don't be fooled. Although these are large, as you can see, I think you might be able to, there's actually a very small exhaust pipe in there, but they're just built in for style. And a lot of aftermarket exhausts, which I do have one at home that I am waiting to put on, do utilize that. So moving on to the wheels. These are stock Dodge Dart wheels. These are the 17s. They do have, I believe, 16s, the 17s, and then 18s. I personally like the look of the 17s more. I like this wheel design. I wish they came in 18s, but they don't. Eventually they would get changed either way. So this car has, honestly, a pretty big tire for what it is. It's a pretty slow, just sedan, but it has a 225/45/17, in case anyone was wondering. Yeah, disc brakes on the rear. It's 2013 at the time this car came out. It's very uncommon to have drums on the back end of a car. Also, you know, the car was praised for its handling back in the day, and I definitely feel that. It's one of the best handling completely stock cars I've driven. I did never drive a completely stock Miata. By the time I got mine, it already had really shitty coilovers on it and handled terribly. And the Mazda 6 had stock suspension, but they were worn out, blown out, and then I switched to coilovers. So I never got to drive that car with decent stock suspension. Outside of what I've shown you, there's not much to this car, so I guess it's time to go back to the front and talk about the transmission, or the shifter, because that's what you feel, and the clutch feel, and then move on to the engine, and then eventually that will just be the end of this video, and I will go home and start installing the mods I have at home, making more content. Moving on to the manual transmission, and, you know, the shifter and the clutch. The clutch pedal feels great. It's the perfect level of like firmness, but it's not too stiff. But I think I would prefer a stiffer clutch over a softer one. So to me, it's perfect. To some people, it may slightly be too loose depending on what they like to drive, but for me, it's fine. But the shifter, not great. It is not my favorite part. Well, it is. It's my favorite part of the car. I get to drive stick again, but it is by far the worst manual shifter I felt. It's very long, and the angle is off, and the fifth gear appears pretty far away from when you're normally cruising around. So it's not great, but the shift knob built into the top feels great for hands as large as mine. It's a very nice, just big shift knob to grab onto. Another thing is sometimes if I take it out of first, I struggle to put it back. Like, it doesn't want to go back in gear. This may seem like I'm struggling, but it's actually just a very notchy transmission. It's, you know, it's got some good notch to it. So that's my thoughts on the manual. It's great. The gearing's great for me. 6th gear is perfect for cruising. Obviously, it's a 6th gear. Clutch feels great, or clutch pedal. Shift knob feels great. Actual shifter, it's pretty okay. Out of 10, I would give it a 5.5. It's the worst I felt, but it's not terrible. It gets the job done. But moving on to my second favorite part of this car, other than its styling, you get to the 1.4 liter multi-air turbocharged Fiat engine. There is your tiny little turbo. I love that it sits right up top. It makes it easy to work on if you're doing a downpipe, intake, swapping the turbo out for a bigger one. You could do that. So this is the same engine in the Fiat 500 Abarth, but that car does come with a bigger factory turbo. Some Dart guys, switched to that turbo years ago, but now they have big turbos, which is, you know, relatively speaking, and stuffed turbos, which they take the stock one and kind of make it bigger but keep it in the same housing so it goes right on like stock without having to make any modifications. So as you can see, here are my 4 coil packs that needed to be swapped out. They're not OEM coils or anything. They're just generic ones. I'll be swapping them again later on when I have more money for Alfa Romeo 4C coils. They give a stronger spark, which will help later on down the road if I choose to do tuning. And then here is your stock intake box. The only reason I talk about this is because it is so tiny. This is the tiniest little intake tube. It's hilarious how small everything is because it's such a small engine. So I guess some things you may look on here that you may want to wonder about because there is a lot going on. This is your oil air separator. It's essentially like your PCV. And that's pretty much it on this engine. There's your computer in the back. There's not much to it. It's a very complicated but also simple engine. Some of the first mods I plan to do to this car, which I already have 2, is an intake and exhaust. Just a regular catback. Later on, when I'm able to get a tune for it, because you can just tune these stock ECUs, you can just buy tuners from multiple companies, is get a downpipe. I would just do one, but they tend to sometimes make the car run pretty funny when you don't have a tune for it. And then upgrade the springs in the multi-air block, which sits under the valve cover kind of back here, if I remember correctly. You just upgrading these little springs, they just look like regular little valve springs. You can gain some decent horsepower out of them, and it's pretty cheap. It's only about $100. So I guess we'll get into a couple problems my Dart has specifically that, you know, still pertain to it. Obviously I told you I fixed the coil packs. I replaced those. This little hose on my intake just snapped off. If I remember correctly, it's for like a boost recirculation. It's just for like efficiency, so it doesn't harm the car, but it's not something you just want to be broken because you just don't want broken stuff on your car. And another one is this has a fluid engine mount. If anyone knows about those, it's essentially just a seal that holds fluid, and the seal did as seals do. It held fluid till it didn't. Now it doesn't, and it's hard to tell, but there's a big gap here, and that's not supposed to be like that. So the engine tends to vibrate and shake around a little bit and make a little more noise than I would like to hear in the interior. It causes vibrations. So I guess now I'll just put my phone by the exhaust so you guys can just hear me start it up. And that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Just showing off the car a little bit. It's not too entertaining, I know. I'm sorry, but like I said, hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.